For 6 months, I lived with a roommate I barely ever saw. We shared the same apartment. I heard her moving around late at night. Sometimes I'd hear soft cello music coming from her room. Sometimes she'd take the notes I left on the fridge. But there was one strange thing I tried not to think about. In 6 months, I never once saw her enter or leave the apartment. Moving to a new city is supposed to feel exciting. For me, it mostly just felt expensive. I was 24, fresh out of college, drowning in student loans, and surviving off instant noodles while trying to make it as a graphic designer. Every apartment I looked at was either microscopic, disgusting, or way outside my budget. Then I found the St. Augustine. The building looked ancient, one of those old pre-war places with gargoyles carved into the stone walls and an elevator that groaned, like it was in pain every time it moved. It was beautiful, and somehow affordable. Too affordable. The listing was for apartment 4B, a 2-bedroom unit in the middle of downtown for almost half the normal price. I assumed there had to be a catch. Turns out there was. The landlord, Mr. Henderson, was this elderly man with thick glasses and a voice so soft it sounded like he was constantly apologizing. When he showed me the apartment, he explained the low rent immediately. "It's a roommate arrangement," he said. Apparently, the second bedroom was already occupied by a young woman who'd been there for a while. "She's very quiet," he told me. "Keeps to herself. Pays her half directly to me." It sounded weird, but honestly, I didn't care. I needed a place to live. The apartment itself was incredible. High ceilings, hardwood floors, tall windows overlooking a quiet street lined with trees. It felt warm, lived in, like the kind of place with stories buried in the walls. There were 2 bedrooms at the end of a narrow hallway. One became mine. The other stayed shut. Always shut. For the first few weeks, I barely even thought about my roommate. I worked long hours, usually leaving before sunrise and coming back exhausted after dark. Sometimes I'd hear movement from her room late at night. Quiet footsteps, soft humming. Other nights, I'd hear soft music drifting under her door. A cello. Slow, sad melodies that echoed faintly through the hallway. She was incredibly good. I remember standing in the kitchen once just listening for almost 10 minutes. I thought about knocking and complimenting her, but something always stopped me. We never crossed paths. To be polite, I started leaving little post-it notes on the fridge. "Hey, I'm Alex. Working late tonight. Sorry if my music was too loud earlier." Every morning, the notes would be gone. No replies. Still, something about that felt strangely comforting, like we had our own silent routine. The first strange thing was the cold. There was one specific spot in the hallway, right outside her bedroom door, that was freezing all the time. Not cool, freezing. Even in the middle of summer, walking through that spot felt like stepping into a freezer for half a second. I mentioned it to Mr. Henderson once. He just nodded slowly. "I'll look into it." He never did. Then came the whispers. At first, I thought it was pipes in the walls or neighbors talking through the vents. Late at night, I'd hear faint murmuring from down the hallway, too soft to understand, almost like someone talking in another room. Sometimes the whispering would blend with the music. Late at night, I'd hear the cello playing so softly, I could barely tell if it was real or just in my head. The songs never sounded familiar, slow, melancholic, almost mournful. One night I was sketching in the living room when I suddenly realized the whispering had stopped the exact moment I looked up. The silence afterward felt wrong, like someone had been caught talking about me. That's when I started noticing the smell. Lavender and old paper. It would drift through the apartment randomly before disappearing seconds later, usually near her room. Then one night, everything changed. I was washing dishes around midnight when I heard a voice behind me. Soft, clear, right next to my ear. Alex. I dropped the plate instantly. It shattered in the sink. I spun around so fast my shoulder slammed into the counter. Nobody was there. The hallway was empty. Her bedroom door was shut. But I knew what I heard. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I walked slowly toward her door and knocked. Hello? Nothing. I knocked again. Did you say something? Silence. I stood there for almost a full minute before finally backing away. That night, for the first time since moving in, I locked my bedroom door. After that night, the apartment stopped feeling safe. Objects started moving. I'd leave my keys by the front door and find them in the kitchen later. Cabinet doors would be open when I knew I'd close them. Books moved. Lights flickered. And every night, around 2 a.m., I'd hear someone pacing slowly back and forth inside her room. Then one night, around 2 a.m., the music stopped abruptly mid-song. Not faded. Stopped. Like someone had suddenly dropped the bow. And for some reason, that silence scared me more than the whispers ever had. One Tuesday night, I came home after one of the worst days of my life. My boss had destroyed a project I spent weeks working on. I was exhausted, angry, miserable. I walked into the apartment and froze immediately. Her bedroom door was open, just slightly, but in 6 months, I had never seen it open before. The apartment was dead silent. No TV, no footsteps, nothing. I should have left. Every instinct in my body told me to walk back outside. But instead, I moved toward the hallway. Slowly. The cold outside her room was unbearable now, like winter air pouring from inside. My hand trembled as I pushed the door open. The room was sparse. A neatly made bed, a wooden desk beside the window, and standing near the glass was a woman. Dark hair tied in a bun, an old cream-colored sweater. She stood completely still, staring down at the street below. I tried to speak. Hey. Slowly, she turned her head toward me. I couldn't fully see her face in the darkness, but something about her expression felt wrong. Empty. Like she wasn't really looking at me, like she was looking through me. Then the hallway light flickered. Once. Twice. And when it came back on, the room was empty. Completely empty. I backed out immediately and shut the door. I didn't sleep that night. For the next few days, I barely functioned. I stopped coming home unless I absolutely had to. I started looking for new apartments, even though I couldn't afford to move. I genuinely thought I was losing my mind. Then Friday night happened. I walked into the lobby and saw Mr. Henderson polishing a brass plaque mounted beside the elevator. I'd somehow never noticed it before. It was a memorial wall. Pictures and names of former residents. I barely glanced at it. Until I saw her. A black and white photo of a young woman with dark eyes and a gentle smile. The same woman from the room. My stomach dropped. Under the photo was a name. Clara Bell. 1998 to 2023. I couldn't breathe. She died in apartment 4B, Mr. Henderson said quietly behind me. I turned toward him slowly. What? Heart condition, he whispered. Happened suddenly. I stared at him. Then who's been living with me? He didn't answer immediately. He just looked down at the plaque. Sometimes, he finally said, people leave pieces of themselves behind. I felt sick. You knew? His face tightened with guilt. She loved that apartment, he said softly. She didn't want to leave. Then he told me something I'll never forget. She kept asking me about a letter before she died. What letter? Her acceptance letter. He swallowed hard. Vienna Conservatory. I frowned. She was a cellist. Brilliant one, too. Suddenly, all those nights listening through the hallway came rushing back to me. The music, the pacing, the sadness in those melodies. It had been Clara the entire time. Mr. Henderson looked back at Clara's photo. The letter arrived 3 days after she passed away. And suddenly, everything made sense. I don't know why I went back to apartment 4B that night. Maybe curiosity, maybe guilt, or maybe I just couldn't stop thinking about how lonely she must have been. The apartment was silent when I stepped inside. No whispers, no humming, no footsteps, just stillness. I walked slowly down the hallway toward her room. The cold hit immediately. Her door was already open. The room looked exactly the same, waiting. My hands shook as I placed the yellowed envelope on the desk beside the window. The acceptance letter. "You got in," I whispered. "You made it." For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the smell of lavender filled the room. Warm, gentle. The desk lamp flickered on by itself, and in the reflection of the window, I saw her. Clara, standing behind me, clearer now than ever before. She looked different, peaceful, her eyes fixed on the letter, and slowly, she smiled. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Then she looked directly at me. Not through me, at me. The room suddenly felt warmer. The pressure in the apartment disappeared completely. And just before she vanished, I heard her voice clearly for the very first time. "Thank you." Then, somewhere deep in the apartment, I heard the cello one last time. Soft, beautiful, just a few final notes. And then, silence. The lavender scent faded slowly into the air, and the apartment was finally empty. I moved out of the St. Augustine a week later. I still think about Clara sometimes, about how lonely someone has to be to stay behind after death just to avoid being forgotten. But I don't think she's there anymore. Mr. Henderson called me a few months later. He told me something strange. Ever since that night, apartment 4B has never stayed vacant for very long, and nobody has ever complained about whispers again.